So over the past few days now, maybe across the past week, we've discussed, the Resident Evil 4 remake that is coming, and, we've gone into what you could expect from a remake based on what we've seen in the 2 remake and the 3 remake in terms of gameplay, mechanics, some kind of, pursuer type presence being there, and then we've gone over kind of what people don't want to see and what people don't want this game to be remade, and both sides of the coin do have a lot of logic behind them. There's the side that the game is next in line for the remake and it might be done well, all things considered. Again, keep in mind that the 2 remake was completely kind of done internally by Capcom, but the 3 remake was, it was kind of hired out and commissioned by other people, like it was outsourced. And that's the word I'm trying to go for, outsourced. So there was a lot of change, whereas the 2 remake didn't see a massive change in terms of content that was cut and stuff like that. So with the 4 remake being completely kind of in the hands of Capcom, which as far as we know is the case, then we should be kind of in good hands with it. Like, I feel like it's in good hands and it could be done properly if, it's given the attention it deserves. And again, keep in mind, this game is held in such high regards by a lot of the Resident Evil community as the best one, so they have to do it justice. But today we're going to go over things that could change, whether that is for the good or the bad. Only a few things, just briefly 3 things I've kind of picked up on from the early part of the game, because I feel like the end of the game, well, the last half of the game, castle kind of onwards, is already so solid. But there could be some changes in the early part of the game that would make it either worse or better, and then one specifically that I feel like they might change, but they really shouldn't. So, if you agree with any of the points I kind of make in the video, then be sure to leave your thoughts down below. Even if you disagree, let me know, because it's always an interesting conversation when it comes to the 4 remake, and, like I've said a million times before, it's all but confirmed at this point. So whether we like it or not, it's coming, and we just kind of have to prepare as best we can. So without any further ado, let's jump into my kind of ideas on what could potentially change in a 4 remake. So in the previous video I mentioned a pursuer type enemy being added to the game, and it is a possibility we can see that in Resident Evil 4 as well, more in the shape of this guy right here. Now, a lot of people have differing opinions in terms of these pursuer type enemies, especially in later games, because there was one in the 2 remake in the form of Mr. X, there was Jack Baker in Resident Evil 7, Nemesis in Resident Evil 3 remake, and of course Lady D in Resident Evil Village. And people like this mechanic for the most part. I do believe it's starting to be a bit overused. If you honestly don't know what I'm talking about, which I'm sure you do, the pursuer type enemies are the ones where throughout a certain area of the game, they'll be kind of roaming it and looking for you, and you can't really kill them, you can't really slow them down, and they are quite tough. They'll probably 1 or 2 hit you, and they're kind of just in the way at times. But nevertheless, we could see this guy in the early part of the game up until his boss fight. Maybe he chases you around the main part of the village early on. Not really chase you, more of like a roaming presence there. I feel like they could change up the formula with that. And instead of him having him chase you when he sees you, he just kind of patrols the key areas of the game. And only in those specific areas is he an issue. Like, if that makes any kind of sense. Because I like the roaming characters chasing you all around the map, but if you are someone like me who plays these games, more than once every single time they release, I've played Village now about 14 to 15 times so far, you can kind of predict where they're going to be, what they're going to do, and how to avoid them the best, and that can be an issue, especially considering all they do is as soon as they make eye contact with you, they just chase you, and you can outrun them, you can lose them quite easily, and, yes, the first time through, maybe the second time through on the harder difficulty, it is more intense, because obviously harder difficulty, they hit you more. First time through, you don't really know where they're going to go and what they're going to do. But after that, it's so like choreographed, you literally know where you need to go, the best route to get there, and the less likely way you run into them. So what I feel like they could do to kind of change this, instead of it being a pursuer, is be like a patroller type. They try and keep you out of an area rather than chasing you around an area. You know what I mean? It would just make for a different kind of atmosphere. Let's say this bit right here, when you're coming back to get through to the castle, the church. Sorry, he could be in this area trying to stop you from getting through that door, along with all these other enemies. Resident Evil 4 is an action horror game, after all, and you have the means to kind of deal with him, or try and take him out, or at least kind of, stun him for long enough to get through, but instead of it being a chase, he's more of preventing you from getting there. If that makes sense. At times, a chase may be necessary, but the pursuer kind of type enemy is starting to get, not tedious, it's just starting to get a bit obvious. Like, I really like the idea, but it's a lot of the same, and it's kind of it's not a big deal for me in terms of repetitiveness, because at the end of the day, like I just said, if you figure it out, you can ignore them and they're no longer a problem. Like, they're just not an issue anymore. Like, I can literally walk past Lady D. I can bait out Mr. X's attacks at this point. Like, it's not really a challenge anymore, it's just a nuisance. So having it change its playstyle would be a bit more beneficial, I think, to switch up the formula.
Got something that might interest you.
The next big thing I wanted to touch on, and this is more of a I hope it doesn't change rather than it could, is the attach case in Resident Evil 4. As we all know, well, all those that have played Village, they brought the system back, and yes, in a sense, it's the same thing. You carry ammo, you carry guns, you carry healing, consumables like grenades and such. But what made the attach case in Resident Evil 4 so memorable and so good is not every item had the same shape. And what I mean by that is, if you play Village, they're all rectangles or squares, right? They're just 2D pictures that are like rectangular or square sized, and you kind of slot them in like a Tetris board. But in this, look at the guns, look at the grenades, look at the healing, look at the eggs. They take up individual different sized slots, and they're not just straight lines. Like the Magnum, it goes up 2, and then right 3 times. And where the trigger is, you can't point anything. It takes up more of a unique part of the space. Like, you can't just put a gun into the slot underneath the barrel of one of these things. It can't be done. You have to organise it so much better. And I spent many a time, many an hour in terms of overall playing the game, organising this shit to look perfectly. And it looks so appealing when you organise it perfectly, because the colours of the ammo lining up, and the grenades, and the healing, and the eggs, and the gun, it just looks amazing. And Village is just kind of black and white. That is not a dig at Village. I think Village is an excellent game. But the attach case was a little bit disappointing, just because it looked different. And that is something to keep in mind. They could change it for simplicity in a 4 remake. I hope they don't. I hope it stays exactly how it is, but just keep in mind that is something that could happen. And last but not least, the one thing I feel like could be changed for the better is the boat fight with the big fish. Like, it's not a good boss fight, it's not really intense, it's not particularly engaging, it's just kind of following a fish around and throwing spears at it. Now, before everyone jumps on me and saying, oh, it's not that bad, boss fights in Resident Evil aren't always great. In fact, they're probably not the reason you play the game. The boss fights are literally just a case of shoot the thing here, or activate this thing a certain amount of times before the boss dies, or shoot this weak spot, or just shoot until it's dead. There's nothing really engaging about boss fights in these games, but this one is just something else. I like the idea of it, I really do like the idea of it. You are literally tethered to a giant fish and have to spear it to death, but at the same time, it's not the best thing ever. It's very awkward and fiddly, and that might just be a time thing, like might just be a thing of its time. I disagree, I think the game plays perfectly, even now, but this fight, there's just something about it. So I had an idea of what we could do, and this is a straight up kind of arena changing portion of the game, but it could be done in terms of making the game a bit more enjoyable, so I'm going to go through the idea now. The idea I had was, instead of it being in like a lake, well, it could still be in the lake, but have like a dock around the outside of the lake and then get rid of the boat, and well, obviously make the whole area a bit smaller because it's huge right now, but let's say you kind of walk around the outside of the lake on like built up platforms and wooden platforms and stuff like that, and it kind of essentially plays out like the Moreau section of Resident Evil Village, where you avoid him to try and get to the arena where you fight him to drain the water. Imagine that, but throughout this kind of arena, when you dodge the fish a certain amount of times, it's like these set up locations where instead of it being harpoons on a boat, it's like harpoon, like guns, you know, emplacements on like old medieval castles and stuff like that. Essentially like the harpoon kind of catapult things in the castle later on. It's those, but it's like the massive harpoons. And you have to kind of get to each of these locations and, you know, shoot them into the fish. You know, precision shots into the fish. You have to hit it. And then if you miss, you have to wait a while before it's reloaded again, so you have to keep looping them around. It would add this whole depth of intensity around the game and the fight again, purely because, you know, this thing can jump up any time. You have to be aware. It's not like a scripted thing. You are on wooden platforms around a very deep set of water. You could get jumped by this thing at any time, so you have to be aware. Maybe, you know, it still does the same thing and knocks you into the water. You have to swim back to shore safely before it eats you. You know, that stuff can still stay, but make the boss fight a bit more engaging to the player. You know, make it an actual arena rather than just be standing on a boat throwing spears at it, because it's not the most engaging thing ever. I know my idea is probably not the best one someone's had, but just giving it a bit more interactability, or making it a bit more interactive. I don't think I said it right the first time. Make it more interactive to the player, will make the boss fight a lot more engaging. The other boss fights in this game are pretty good. They're pretty standard fare Resident Evil, you know, fights. Even the Krauser one, in its own way, it's quite unique. Like, you can literally beat that guy with a knife very quickly if you know what you're doing. I've seen many a person do it, and I've actually done it myself. And the other boss fights, yeah, they're just good. Again, it's kind of a hit a weak spot until it dies type thing, but they're still good, and this one could be good too if done right. But that's going to be it. Do let me know your thoughts on my ideas down below. I know I've briefly touched on a few. There's more I have, so if you want to see any more ideas from me, do let me know, because I have plenty I could talk about with the remake, and I could always do a part 2 to this video. I just wanted to throw these ideas out there because I feel like they're big points in the game that could change in terms of how the remakes work now, and additions to Village, and this boss fight in general. I don't hate this boss fight, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's probably one of the weakest boss fights in Resident Evil, if not definitely this game. But yeah, I just thought I'd add my kind of opinion to this boss fight and how they could be changed, as well as the other 2 points I mentioned. But yeah, do let me know your thoughts down below, and I'd love to hear them. Whether you agree with me or not, again, let me know. Again, I keep saying again a lot, I need to stop doing that. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe for brand new Resident Evil content every single day, and turn notifications on so you do not miss a video and a stream. We stream every weekend. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.